Greetings, children of the screen, your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here once again. That is right, my computer is fixed and I am back. So, welcome once again to Carry That Weight, the Cowboy Bebop Retrospective, where we're today going to be taking a look at Session 5, Ballad of Fallen Angels.
Okay, showtime.
I think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Right on, guys. As I haven't done one of these here in just a little bit, I'm going to forego the normal, kind of more analytical take I would do for one of my solo episodes, and just kind of talk about this one with you guys, because I absolutely love this episode. It is one of my favorites. And so, as always, there are going to be spoilers in this, so spoiler warning, and if you haven't watched the show yet, and for some reason you're watching this video, go watch the show! So in this episode, we see several crime syndicates that have just brokered a truce, and as many of them are leaving, we see one of the heads of one of the syndicates named Mao, who is relieved that it's finally over, that he can finally breathe in peace, and then all of a sudden the ship that everyone else is flying away on frickin' explodes, and all his dudes are dead behind him, and then all of a sudden there's a tall, gray-haired man with a sword and a bird, and things aren't good. Over on the Bebop, we catch up with our guys as they find out that because of these actions, there is now a very large bounty at play. Jet just doesn't seem to want to get involved in all the, syndicate BS, but Spike is determined to get involved. So he decides to go down to the planet and start getting some information for himself. However, Faye overheard this, and she is also interested. So if Jet's not going to be going after it, she thinks, I guess I'll give it a shot myself. As Spike does his investigation, we get to see our first glimpses into his former life and who he was and where he came from, finding out that he was actually a member of the syndicate ran by Mal, the gentleman who really wanted this all just to be over with, and then was accosted by Tall, Gray, and Swordy. We also find out that Tall, Gray, and Swordy was actually also a member of the syndicate, whose name is Vicious, and him and Spike were pretty much partners and best friends until a woman named Julia came between them, and this caused the fallout between Spike and all of them. From this, we learn that Spike still had a lot of emotional attachment, especially to Mao, and to the whole fallout from Vicious. There's a lot of things unresolved. It's something that he has just never really dealt with. He's just run away from. And this is the first time that his past is finally looping back on him, and he feels a responsibility to take care of Vicious because of this. As I said, Jet wants nothing to do with this whole thing, and Spike is telling him very little. But at the same time, Faye is going right after it. She has poured herself into a absolutely gorgeous, seamless dress and has taken herself to the opera where Mao has an opera box. She makes her way up there through some subterfuge only to find that Mao is already dead, having been killed by Vicious. And we get our first true introduction to Vicious as he gives his name, and it's glorious, even though it does kind of perpetuate the cliche of villains and opera and that whole thing. Whatever, it's awesome. So, Faye has got herself captured, and despite the fact that Jet wants nothing to do with this, because Spike feels that he has an obligation due to kind of a dereliction of duty to Mao, that he's going to go and fight Vicious anyway. So he gets the address and heads that way, where we just get some of the absolute most awesome action stuff from this show. Really great character bits. Needless to say, Faye gets away. Spike and Vicious have a pretty awesome, if not brief, fight, because when you're dealing with two people as highly trained as they are, fights don't usually last all that long. Vicious throws Spike out of the damn cathedral window, while Spike throws a grenade inside, and boom! Later, we get a flashback showing us how Spike first met Julia, and it was in a situation where he was all messed up, very similar to how he is now. And she would sing to him, and she had bandaged him up and took care of him, a very kind of Florence Nightingale type thing. This transitions back to present day, where we see Spike looking like a mummy, all beat up on the Bebop, with Faye singing to him. He beckons for her to come in close, and as she does, he mumbles through his bandages, "You sing off key," and she slaps him, and that's essentially our episode.
Huh?
You sing off key.
Right on. As I said earlier, this is one of my absolute favorite episodes, and it can't be understated to the degree which this is also a very important episode, and everything in it just works so perfectly. It's important for multiple reasons, namely because while Cowboy Bebop as a series does not have one defined, like, overarching plot, it's more a matter of experiencing these characters as they develop through multiple little stories and learning more about them and their world and seeing like their overall trajectory as like the guiding force of the series. That's really more of what it is. But this episode introduces Vicious and the conflict between Spike and Vicious and how that affects all the characters on the Bebop crew. So therefore it really is the first introduction of the main like overarching kind of thematic carry through for the show, and really like the closest thing that could be referred to as kind of like a series plot, which is the conflict between the Bebop crew and Vicious. And so yeah, it's also one of the few characters or elements that keeps reoccurring. It's really the only constant in the series. So this episode's very important because of that, and also because it's the first episode where we really get to take a look at one of our main characters and see what they were like, not only before the show started, but even really get to see who they really are now, underneath all the like, you know, narcoses and like stubbornness and all that kind of stuff. So it's just absolutely beautifully executed, and I love it. So again, since I'm here by myself, normally this is the part where I go through people's favorites and least favorites. Since it's just me, I'm going to go ahead and lay out a couple of my favorite things with you guys, and then kind of like the one thing that kind of gives me pause about the episode, but kind of not. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So first off, I absolutely love the way that this specific episode uses a mix of kind of iconography and character archetypes and shifts them around and gives us just the pieces of them that we need for us to be able to kind of imply a history to Spike. Because the thing is, like, they give us little pieces for sure, and those pieces are very powerful, but really when the episode's over, we don't actually know as much about the character as we feel like we know. And it gives a lot of, like, wiggle room, and it still makes the character's backstory and his character arc very malleable as things go on. But things like, you know, we get to see that he was formerly part of, like, a crime syndicate, and the imagery that we see there of, like, him and Vicious back-to-back firing guns, it invokes images of, like, not only like kind of a John Woo sensibility of kind of like the killer and the contract killers and all that kind of stuff, but also the very gritty kind of noir badassery that is inherent in the character of Spike. So again, we get those images, and because we are so familiar with the ideas and concepts, we project a lot of what we think and feel about the character into the gaps that are there. And the show's just excellent because, again, these are very short episodes. They utilize all those things very, very well to give us like an emotional attachment to a character and give him weight and make him feel lived in just by understanding how we will respond to the character archetypes and the iconic imagery that they're providing us with. It's freaking immaculate. And next up, even though this is probably the most obvious one, that fight in the church/cathedral is just dope. Like, every moment of it is awesome. The music is awesome. The shots are awesome. The way things play out are awesome. The dialogue between Spike and Vicious is absolutely great and like perfectly encapsulates their two characters, both in the past, present, and moving forward in the future. Like, everything about it is so perfect. And again, like, we get fights later on in the show that definitely are bigger, and even like the final confrontation between Vicious and Spike has a lot of similar elements to this fight, but goes much further. And this is like a great like taste of things to come, and it's the first time that we've had one of the fights that wasn't just like fun and cool and interesting, but it's something that we're like emotionally invested in because our main character has like a personal attachment to it. It's not just another job. So yeah, they knew exactly how to milk it for everything it was worth, and it is just impeccably done. It's great.
Why are you still alive?
And finally, I really enjoy in this episode, even though it's like one of the things that's touched on a little bit less, is how it gives us more insight into and also like grows Spike and Jet's relationship as friends. In this episode, we see that like obviously they have become really close. They get along really good, even though they bicker like a married couple. They like fight all the time, but they work really well together. They're a great team. And in this episode, we really get the first indication of how little they actually know about each other. We already know that these are characters who are kind of like running from their past in a sense, and they haven't been able to come to terms with things, and because of that, they've really accepted each other on the grounds of like who they are at this time. And whenever Spike is hesitant to tell Jet what's going on, you both get the feeling that like he doesn't want to drag Jet into it because he knows how this might end, but you also get the sense that like he doesn't really want to tell Jet who he used to be because he's actually afraid of losing like the one connection he has in the world. And even though that's very understated and they play it out more in a very machismo kind of bravado type way, it's really interesting. And then you like also have the juxtaposition of that to the way that the two guys are still treating Faye in the episode, where she's very clearly still an outsider, and she's still kind of more of an annoyance who's clinging on to them as opposed to her actually being part of the team. And that just really helps illustrate again how close they actually are, despite like the fact that when we've seen them in the show, it hasn't actually seemed like as much of an emotional connection as a connection out of convenience. And of course, like I said, they fight like a married couple, and we see in this episode, whenever Spike's off doing his own thing, Jet kind of gets all like huffy and stuff, and he's just like, I'm not gonna help him, and then of course, at the end of the episode, he like comes to his senses after accidentally messing up his bonsai tree, and obviously he came to save them, even though we don't see it on screen. It's very clearly implied, and the way that they've built that stuff up throughout the episode really helps fill in that blank and like really affirm that friendship and that relationship and that like brotherhood that they have for each other. It's really great. And again, it also highlights Faye as not being part of that group, which takes me nicely into the one thing that I might kind of have issue with this, although it's done for a reason. So yeah, if there's anything in this episode that I would have to say I have a problem with or take issue with, it's the fact that Faye is kind of turned into a damsel in distress, and just like that common trope. And again, like part of that is them playing with archetypes, but the reason why I tend to kind of give it a pass is because again, this is a show that over time develops the characters and does interesting things with them. And this is one example of a time where Faye tried to live by her rules from before she started joining up with the Bebop crew. Like, she thought very selfishly she was going to go out and do this for herself, and she never 100% gets rid of that throughout the show, but this is one of the many times where that works not well. It just, like, totally backfires on her, and it's one of the stepping stones in her character's development. Also, I think it's also helped by the fact that Spike clearly doesn't really care about her. Like, he's there to fight Vicious. Saving her is more of a byproduct of that, which also will help us feel the growth of the characters as things progress. So again, while they used a very, like, iconic trope, and kind of, it would seem like they put Faye at a disadvantage when she's a very strong character, it actually is part of her character's development and growth, and without it, you couldn't have a lot of the things that come in the future. So, from that regard, it's like, I kind of give it a pass. Plus, they put her in that gorgeous dress, so, like, sure, whatever, guys. Yeah. Gorgeous. So yeah, guys, it's a great session. What else can I say? I mean, even the thing in the session that is not 100% awesome because it has, like, some negative connotations for Faye, it's actually part of her development. So I can't even really complain about that. The episode is just about perfect. There's obviously always going to be little things you complain about, but when there's this much in it that is done well and done just to perfection, how can you complain about the rest of it? It's just, I don't even know. And obviously now is the point where I would normally ask, well, do you have any predictions for the future of the show or anything like that? And I've already seen it several times, so I'm going to say that my prediction is the rest of the show is going to be awesome. Yeah. Thank you guys very much for joining me for another edition of Carry That Weight, the Cowboy Bebop Retrospective. I'm Nerd Scum. If you like this video, please leave a like and share it with some of your friends. And also, leave a comment down in the comment box below. Let me know what you thought about this session. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and take off for the night. But I'll see you in 2 weeks with the next episode. Hope y'all have a good one. Nerd Scum, out.
Allez, à bientôt. See you next time.
The real fabulous 本当の悲しみが知りたいだけ泥の代わり使